Tonight, let's dim the lights, turn on a gentle fan, and slip into a world where shadows whispered louder than swords, and being invisible wasn't a skill, it was survival. Welcome to the medieval underworld, where being an assassin wasn't glamorous, heroic, or even smart. It was just desperate. Forget hooded legends and cinematic stunts. This is the real story. Blood-soaked boots, contracts paid in betrayal, and disguises that smelled like goat. You didn't get a training montage. You got a headache and a rusted blade. So if you're tuning in at 2 a.m. from a sleepless apartment in Manila or a quiet farmhouse in Scotland, let me know in the comments. What time is it where you are, and why are you still awake? And if this journey into the darkest, dumbest job in medieval Europe helps you relax, maybe hit like or subscribe. But only if you enjoy your history, boring, brutal, and just a little bit cursed. No one steps out of a medieval cottage, yawns, and exclaims with inspiration, "Today I am going to be an assassin." There is no candlelit initiation ceremony, no mysterious robed master delivering profound words like, "Life is the enemy of silence." No, being an assassin is not a divine calling from fate. It is what happens when fate goes away and leaves you with an empty stomach, an unwashed crime, and hands shaking from having just escaped from a castle guard. It is not a path, it is a pit, and you fall into it because there is no other way. In a medieval society where the only thing thinner than a poor man's chance of survival was a winter blanket, being an assassin was not an option, it was a consequence. When you had lost your land to taxes, your child to illness, your reputation to a false accusation of stealing a pig, you had little choice but to turn yourself into a walking shadow. And not everyone was lucky enough to be offered a job. You had to have something, not character, but ability. Maybe you were a mercenary, had picked pockets 10 times without getting caught, or simply knew how to climb over walls without breaking a tooth. Someone would leave behind a small bag of silver, a name, and a look that needed no explanation. Congratulations, you've just been hired without filling out an application. Your clients are neither good nor neutral. They are counts who want to seize land, merchants who want to clear their blood debts, and bishops with too many secrets. They don't want to sign contracts. They want things resolved quickly, cleanly, and without anyone knowing who has met whom. As for you, you need money, not to live comfortably, but simply to survive. A full meal, a pair of shoes that don't wear out, or simply to buy the silence of a guard. That's a whole career goal. But you know from the very first step that you are not the protagonist. There is no spotlight to shine on your achievements. There are no notorious enemies to defeat. There are only unfamiliar names to remember so you don't kill the wrong person, and stinking streets you have to crawl through like a nameless ghost. You are a creature who lives on the edge of crime and oblivion, a creature that no one wants to see unless they need you. At this point, you might be thinking, well, that sounds dramatic. Well, in the same way that a bout of malaria in the middle of the winter forest sounds risky. There's nothing majestic about being stabbed in the back by someone who hired you because they're afraid you'll live too long. There's nothing artistic about having to stick a knife in stale bread to avoid being searched by soldiers. And if you think being an assassin is mastering the game, sorry, you're the pawn, and the board is always covered in the blood of the person who went first. The most terrible thing is not what you do. It is the way society, makes you exist as if you never existed. You are not mourned, you are not remembered. You kill, then disappear. And if you do not disappear, they will disappear you. In a world where a superstitious fear can make villagers burn a goat alive because it looks strange, you, silent, knife carrying, avoiding eye contact, are the devil in human form in their eyes. And you know what's funny? Even in that life, you still have to be thankful for your absurd ability to survive. Because in a world of disease, political turmoil, poverty, and fanaticism, the fact that you're still breathing, even in the form of darkness, is a kind of miracle. A sad miracle, but a miracle is a miracle. And even in the cruelest of historical moments, it's worth mentioning, not to glorify, but to remind you that sometimes just surviving is a victory. If you've ever imagined that the medieval assassin profession began with a secretive training course in a monastery deep in the mountains, where black-robed masters taught you how to strike in the dark with obscure Eastern philosophies and dreamy flute music, then I'm sorry. The reality is more like being thrown into a lion's cage, except the lions wear armor and are called city knights. There are no textbooks, no manuals, no induction sessions, or enthusiastic mentors to show you how to slide over walls without sliding into ditches. You learn by not dying. And believe me, that's a feat. If you sneak into a lord's mansion the first time and come out with all your limbs, it's not because you're good, it's because you got lucky. After that, you start to notice which doors creak, which soldiers are asleep, and where the toilets are on the castle map. Your skills don't come from school, they come from cold nights on the roof, trying not to sneeze at the rising smoke. Yes, you can stab, but what really matters is knowing how to run after you've been stabbed, and running without falling into an arrow or a trap. You're ahead of most people. From weapons to tactics, everything is improvised and intuitive. You're not given swords, you steal knives. You don't own light body armor. You wrap a blanket around your waist to block a missed stab. You're not taught how to deal with a heavy 6-foot guard. You learn by being caught and lucky to escape the slippery rain. Most. And then there's the classic problem, poison. Don't expect dosage instructions or testing equipment like in the movies. There are no test tubes, no masks, no instantaneous chemical reactions. There is perhaps a bag of crushed roots, a foul smell, and a vague piece of advice from an old woman who lives near the cemetery. Sprinkle it lightly, or it will cry out in pain if it dies too late. You don't practice during the day. You don't have a simulator to practice against. You don't know in advance which way your target will go, what you'll eat, or what time you'll sleep. You have only one certainty. If you fail, you can't take the test again. That's your only attempt. And failing means hanging your head in the marketplace. In a profession where mistakes are paid for in blood, the lack of formal instruction is not a flaw. It's a given. Because you're not a student, you're a tool. And tools don't need to understand how they work. They just need to stab and keep quiet. That brutality is terrifying. Looking back at today, with books, teachers, and YouTube videos teaching survival skills, you realize that sometimes being educated is a luxury, and surviving because you're prepared is better than surviving because you're not dead yet. In the world of those who live by the blade and walk as quietly as a stray cat, there is no such thing as pay on time. If you think you can finish a murder and then return home with a silver coin and a thank you, sorry, you've just stumbled into a fairy tale. The reality of the Middle Ages was much harsher. Your clients, be they powerful counts or fat merchants, never trusted you. They needed you alive, and they wanted you gone immediately afterward, because an assassin who did his job knew too much, and a man who knew too much was scarier than a man with a knife. The so-called half up front, half on completion may sound fair, but it often means, if you come back alive, I'll consider killing you to save money. You might get a small bag of silver to use as capital, or an empty bag and a tight-lipped smile from the middleman. And if you dare to ask, where's the rest? You might just turn on the switch of a preset death trap. No one likes a hired hand with a good memory. There are cases where what sounds like a real job is actually a show. You accept a contract to assassinate a powerful figure, only to discover that the target is a trap set up with soldiers and your name carved on a stake. Not everyone who hires you needs you to do a job. Sometimes they just need you to disappear. In a world where there are no legal contracts, no recourse, and the law protects only the wealthy, the idea of fair pay is a cruel joke. And every time you take a case, you have to ask yourself, am I the assassin or am I the prey in a game I can never win? Your survival depends not just on your backstabbing skills, but also on your ability to smell betrayal in every coin that shakes around in your duffel bag. That's the real art of survival. If you picture a medieval assassin emerging from the shadows with a tight-fitting leather cloak, a shiny dagger tucked into his sleeve, and a glinting eye beneath his hood, like in some game whose name begins with assassin, well, forget it. They don't have a special toolkit. They have a raincoat borrowed from that frozen monk last week. No dart pouch, no sound-deadening shoes, no complicated pop-up blade mechanism. Just a blunt knife that you have to hide in stale bread to avoid being searched by a guard and hope it doesn't fall out mid-bow. A real assassin's equipment comes from two places: a stolen BG and a desperate imagination. Knives, ropes, poisoned needles, anything that can stab, constrict, or silently stop someone's breathing can be a potential weapon. If you're lucky, you can find a sharp, rust-free knife. If not, a sharp piece of wood will do, as long as it's in the right place. And if the weapon breaks mid-flight, sorry. A roofing board, a wire coat hanger, or even a belt buckle can all be strategic weapons. Not in the assassination tactics sense, but in the nothing-to-lose sense. And camouflage? Imagine sneaking into a castle in black armor embroidered with silver thread. It was nice, but you'd be beaten to death before you even got through the gates. The best camouflage was to look like you weren't wanted. A ragged, muddy, slightly stinky, and stuttering man from the cold. The perfect disguise for blending in with the wood carriers, the floor cleaners, or the spitters at the base of a tree. Invisibility back then wasn't about magic or technology. It was about being so ugly that people wouldn't remember you. The irony was that it was precisely because they were so poor, so dirty, so ordinary that the assassins of that era survived. Having nothing to lose was a form of armor. Not standing out was a form of magic. And it was precisely this rawness, this complete lack of prestige and professional tools, that made them alive until the next morning. Not because they were strong, but because no one cared. And in a profession where survival meant being hunted, oblivion was the most precious gift fate could bestow. In medieval assassins, The first thing you had to give up wasn't your life, it was your relationship. Because no one could be an assassin and still keep a close friend. No one could hide a knife under their shirt and still hold an honest conversation. Friendship requires trust, and trust, in this profession, is a hook and wire trap hidden in the damp straw of the human heart. If you had someone to drink with and confide in, well, sorry, they've either betrayed you or are dead, or worse, someone is questioning you. You live in a city where no one knows your name, no one should know where you've been, and if anyone does, you have to leave before they can tell a second person. Even your employer shouldn't know who you are, because if they do, you'll soon be forced to change your job to an anonymous corpse in the well behind the abbey. In the evenings at the tavern, you don't sit near the fire. You choose the darkest corner with your back to the wall and your eyes on the door. You don't drink much, you don't talk much, and when someone asks you your name, you give them a fake name with a smile that no one believes. You don't need them to believe you. You just need them to shut up. Don't dream of secret societies of assassins shaking hands by candlelight. Don't think of a place where dark brothers practice their skills and share experiences. In the real world, people in the same profession don't want to meet, because meeting means knowing each other, and knowing each other means risk. If one assassin is caught and gives up on another, the promise of we're teammates quickly turns into, I know where he sleeps. Trust is a luxury, and information is a dangerous commodity. Being alone in the dark is not just a condition, it's a requirement for survival. You have no one to tell stories to, no one to hug, no one to keep secrets from. Everything you do alone, not because you choose to, but because anything else is like kindling next to a haystack. And if you ever feel the need for a hug, a sincere greeting, well, unfortunately, this profession is not for those who still have their hearts. Hearts soften easily, and knives don't wait. In medieval assassins, there was no such thing as try again. One small mistake, one misstep, one sneeze just as the guard turned his head, and that was it. You didn't just fail, you were caught. And if you were caught, you didn't die quietly. There was no gentle resolution or quick end behind velvet curtains. Instead, you were treated to a bloody spectacle in the middle of the square, where people gathered, munching on turnips and pointing at your body stretched out on a wooden frame like an open-air performance of organized cruelty. Your failure is more than an occupational hazard. It's an opportunity for someone else to teach the common people a lesson. Don't even think about mutiny, and certainly don't even think about hiring someone to do it for you. They don't deal with you in the dark. They drag you out in the daylight, tie you to a stake, and maybe even write your name wrongly on a placard across your chest. Then the whip, the coals, the wheels, whatever is hot in the city's torture chamber that week is brought out. Because the goal isn't just punishment, it's entertainment. Your death must be painful enough, loud enough, long enough to resonate. That echo travels through the tavern, through the market, to the ears of those who once dreamed of hiring a man in the dark. That is how the aristocracy protects its power, by making you a living and then dead example for everyone else. What's more painful is, sometimes you don't get killed right away. You're held, interrogated, and the person who hired you is the first to want you gone. But if you don't disappear in time, You're living proof of a plot gone wrong, and no one likes talking proof. In short, if you're going to be an assassin, do it right. Because if you miss by a hair, you don't just lose your chance, you lose your right to die in silence. And in those days, that was a rare privilege. If survival is hard enough, surviving without being burned alive is a mind game of its own, especially when you're a contract killer in an age when people would burn bread if it burned in the shape of a devil's face. In a medieval society where toilets hadn't been properly invented, logic wasn't much of a concern. But superstition was the unofficial state religion. Anything that couldn't be explained, from a chicken that died unexpectedly to a baby crying at night, could be blamed on a hooded stranger lurking in the shadows, as stealthy as the stench of secrets. You don't have to do anything to be suspected of being a witch. You just have to look like you know more than the average person. And in the eyes of the villagers, knowing more is a sign of evil. You know how to poison a knife blade? Surely you learned it from a demon. You move as quietly as a cat? You've made a pact with some creature that lives deep in the woods. You don't talk to anyone, avoid eye contact, and stare into the fire in the oven? You're welcome to the pyre, with some sweet grass to sweeten the smell. The irony is, your thoroughness, your caution, your survival skills, which should be respected, have made you a symbol of evil in the collective imagination. People don't fear you because you kill. They fear you because they don't understand you. And in a world where what is incomprehensible must be eliminated, your silence carries the weight of a curse. So even if you've carefully hidden your knife, left no trace, talked to no one, just one garlic woman pointing and saying, "He has a strange look in his eyes," you can become the brightest flame on that sleepy Saturday afternoon. And if you think you're smart enough to hide, don't forget, rumors run faster than your feet. While you're still planning your escape, the villagers have gathered firewood, the priest has finished his exorcism, and the children are already sitting, waiting to see how the city demon screams when the fire touches his heels. Sadly, sometimes the thing that keeps you alive is the thing that gets you burned alive. And throughout history, there has been no shortage of people who died for being too good in a world that didn't accept being good. In the modern imagination, poison is a sophisticated, cold, and professional weapon. A drop in a glass of wine, and minutes later, the target is slumped over the table in elegant silence. But in the Middle Ages, using poison was like playing a lottery with the prize being unintentional suicide. Assassins weren't pharmacists. They were people who picked the wrong route, mixed the wrong dosage, and sometimes forgot to wash their hands before eating their own bread. While you were trying to poison your target, there was a good chance that you would succumb first to a sticky finger, sweat in your eye, or simply the wind blowing in the wrong direction as you stirred the soup. Finding the ingredients isn't as glamorous as it sounds. You don't walk into a brightly lit laboratory, but crouch in the bushes at dusk, trying to pick some leaves that an old woman in the village once said made her husband sick for 2 weeks. The effects are hit or miss. Sometimes the victim just gets dizzy and gets better, sometimes vomits all night and curses the chef's family, and sometimes dies after 3 days of agony that would summon every doctor, priest, and shaman in the area. There are no super accurate potions. just watchfulness, prayer, and lots of trial and error. The trouble doesn't end there. Even if you do concoct a potent enough poison, you still have to find a way to get it into someone's food or drink, which is always tested by 3 people first, and a dog as a final tester. And if the dog dies, guess who's the first suspect? The hooded figure who hangs around the kitchen and asks questions like, "What kind of soup do you like for the holidays?" In short, poison is not the gentle, smart, safe solution it seems. It is a weapon for those who risk their enemies and their own lives. In a world where every mistake is paid for in blood, sometimes your own, choosing poison does not prove your wisdom, but only that you are desperate enough to gamble your life on a handful of crushed roots mixed with luck and blindness. Being an assassin in the Middle Ages brought no glory, no medals, and no poems written in your honor. If you succeeded, your existence was denied. If you failed, you were hanged in the middle of the square and had your guard misspell your name on a wooden plaque hanging at your feet. In both scenarios, the common point is you disappeared. Silently, without a trace, no one cried. No one told the story in a trembling voice over a drink. You left no name in the history books. If you did, it was as an unknown assassin, and sometimes unknown was the last piece of luck this profession had to offer. You are not a hero. You are not a villain with a grand agenda. You are a small shadow that drifts through people's lives, leaving behind bloodstains that are hard to wash out and silences that are hard to swallow. And the irony is, the person who hired you doesn't want you to be remembered, because if someone knows who you are, they know who hired you. Your name, if you still use a name, is a risk. You dare not even carve your own symbol into the handle of a knife, because one misplaced stroke could be evidence that sends you to the gallows. Death doesn't make you famous, it just makes others sleep better. And if you're lucky enough not to die, your reward is to live as if you never existed. You move villages, change your accent, shave your beard, change your name, and sit in the corner of a tavern as if the world were a place to avoid. There are no statues to those who helped history. The ones with statues are the ones who gave the orders, not the ones who wielded the knives. Sadly, in a world that is bloodthirsty and hates the truth, the assassin is a character who is not allowed to exist beyond the moment of his death. You are born to be erased, and that is the cruelest thing of all, not death, but a disappearance that leaves nothing but a brief fear and then complete oblivion. Success doesn't make you safer. On the contrary, when you complete an assassination mission, the moment the knife slides smoothly through the target's neck, you become the greatest threat to your employer. Because in your hands is a secret, a name, a motive, a plot. And to the powers that be in the Middle Ages, there was nothing more terrifying than a secret that walked, talked, and knew too much. Your clients are not beholden to you. They don't stand on the balcony, clapping you when you return, smiling and handing you your money, and saying thanks next time. They are always plotting their next move, and the next part of the plan is usually clean up the mess, starting with the person who just did the dirty work for them. They don't need you anymore. They just want you gone. If you're lucky, they ignore you. If not, they hire someone else to do to you what you did to the old target. A vicious cycle of rust, sweat, and cold rejection. There are even cases where clients place 2 contracts at once, one to kill the target, one to kill the assassin. Not because they hate you, but because you are a human risk, an unthrown knife, a piece of scrap paper that no one should ever see. And in a society where survival depends on the ability to keep your mouth shut, they can't afford to let anyone come forward with a story that could get them beheaded. The trust in this industry, if there is one, lasts until the last second you pull the knife. After that, everything can be rewritten, except your presence. So after you complete a job, you don't go to collect your reward. You go into hiding. You don't ask, when will I get paid? You ask, when will I be exposed? Because in the eyes of those in power, assassins are not partners. They are temporary pawns, used and discarded. And if you survive it all, don't celebrate too soon, because your life is a mess, and the people who hired you are very neat freaks. In the medieval assassin profession, there was no such thing as retirement. There was no duffel bag of pension money, no little house at the end of the village with a vegetable garden and a rocking chair on the porch. There was no morning tea, no faithful old dog, and no one to wish you a peaceful end of life. The only thing you had when you wanted to stop was a shadow chasing you on the damp ground and a whisper in your head, keep running, don't stop. Because if you stopped, it was very possible that the next person you had failed to kill, or the old employer who feared you for talking too much, was standing behind you with a blade sharper than your trust. You are not allowed to age publicly. If you are lucky enough to reach middle age, it is because you know how to pretend to be an herbalist, speak with a foreign accent, and bow when passing a squad of soldiers. Every wrinkle is a memory no one else knows. Every aching joint is a reminder that a fall now could really be the end, not because of age, but because you won't be able to get up before someone recognizes who this guy looks familiar to. You don't carry family photos. You carry a pocket knife, some silver tucked into the hem of your shirt, and a new name you thought of this morning. Even when no one is after you, you still run, because you don't believe they don't remember. You don't believe they forgive. And worst of all, you don't believe yourself. The years of silence and of killing in silence, of hating from town to town, they erode the person inside you until you're not sure if you're alive or just an undetected trail. No one offers a reward to thank you for stopping, but plenty of people are willing to kill just to make sure you never come back. So there is no retirement. There is only a pause. And in a world where human memory is flawed, but hatred is enduring, the assassin who survives the longest is not the strongest, but the one who runs forever without looking back. The killer who survives is not the best, but the one who knows how to disappear at the right time. But survival does not mean living happily. Those people, if they still breathe until their hair turns gray, usually do not talk much, do not look long, and do not sleep well. They sit on the edge of the village, next to a broken wall, with their eyes always looking at the horizon, as if waiting for a past to emerge from the darkness. They do not tell stories, but their eyes tell more than enough, a look that pierces through you, through the wind, as if they are still running even though their legs are numb with age. You might see them in the monastery, guarding the gate, shaving their heads, reciting prayers. But if you looked closely, their hand movements were too precise to be routine floor scrubbing. Every step was light, every movement discreet, as if they still thought someone was watching them. Some became village madmen, babbling about shadows in the woods, sounds of metal under the ground, or screaming in the middle of the night because someone's coming. The villagers thought they were insane, but really, they had just seen too much and carried it too long. It's bitter, but the survivors can't escape the profession. They no longer kill, but in their minds, they still count every strange step, anticipate every suspicious glance. A knock on the door in the middle of the night can wake them up in a sweat, clutching the knife they hid under their mattress for 15 years. They live like shadows of themselves, no longer knowing what is a real threat and what is an illusion. And in the stories that occasionally trickle out, the scariest thing isn't that they killed anyone, it's that they can't remember any of their victims. Memories blur together into a hazy gray fog like early winter, leaving only an emptiness that no name can fill. Survival doesn't bring freedom. It just gives them more time to be haunted by the very profession they thought they'd do for a few years and then quit. But being a killer, as we know, doesn't get any days off. And if it does, it's your mind that's going to keep coming after you. Ever fantasized about being a medieval assassin, wearing a black hood, walking silently across a moonlit roof, swinging your knife with poetic precision? The scene plays over and over in your head like a slow-motion movie full of spirit, but in reality, you'd die from slipping in horse manure the first time you rested on the roof. The moonlight doesn't make you cool, it just makes you more conspicuous. And that roof, sorry, breaks the second you take a step. In your head, you're a cold, well-trained assassin who says little and does much, never breaking a sweat for fear of giving himself away. But in real life, you're shivering and cold because it's humid and your disguise is stolen from a leper and it still smells. The so-called stealth isn't as cool as a ninja jumping through a bamboo forest, but rather standing behind a pile of wet firewood for hours, your hands numb from the wind, just hoping that the cat won't meow and ruin the whole plan. Even in action, you think you're going to charge in one single strike, but you don't. The target struggles, screams, you panic, hit the wrong bone. Blood doesn't spray beautifully like in the movies, but drips like fish sauce dripping from a jar. And then, no one says brilliant, no epic soundtrack, just the sound of approaching footsteps, and you start another leg of your journey, panting, running, wondering if you'll get bitten by the guard dog. Such is the reality of medieval assassins, muddy, cold, exhausting, and painfully funny. There's no glory, there's no aesthetics, just bare survival amid mud, sweat, and animal-smelling panic. And if you're lying there listening to this at 2 a.m., thinking, yeah, I could do that, let me warn you, you'd be nervous flipping a rice paper, let alone taking a knife and killing someone and running through the night through a sleeping village. History is a grand stage, but not everyone who steps on it leaves a name. Medieval assassins knew that better than anyone. They were the ones who wrote power in blood, but the pen was never theirs. Once the job was done, they were not remembered as heroes or rebels, but simply disappeared. No one carved their names in stone, no one recounted their journey in epics. Any trace, if there was one, was erased by the very people who needed them most. You can't look up top 10 medieval assassins in an old library because no one wants to keep records of the knives that have passed over the necks of kings, counts, and bishops. They are stains on reputations to be wiped away with absolute silence. And if anyone is curious enough to ask, you'll be looked at as if you just asked the executioner who killed your mother. The existence of assassins is denied with absolute coldness, as if no one ever did such things, even though the consequences are present in the very fabric of power. Centuries passed, temples were built, dynasties rose and fell, but there was no altar to those in the shadows. History loves the light, loves the crown, loves those who speak loudly and die publicly. And assassins? They die in the shadows, live in silence, and are buried with the truth they once knew. By the time the paper Brown Hood Unknown is dug up, it is too late to give them back a name. Ironically, that is the default fate of those who do history's dirty work, to be washed clean of history itself. They don't make history, they are erased from it, and that's the end of it. But is it true that none of them are remembered? Wait, there are a few names that escape the shadows. Step into Rome, 49 CE, where marble gleams under flickering oil lamps, and the air's thick with secrets darker than the Tiber's mud. You're picturing a queen, right? Silk robes, golden crown, commanding legions with a wave. Nope. Meet Agrippina the Younger, no scepter, just a smirk that could slice through a senator's ego. She wasn't a queen, she was a fox, weaving webs so sticky they trapped an empire. Mother, schemer, survivor, she didn't rule Rome. She rigged it, holding power on her fingertips with whispers sharper than any dagger. Welcome to the Julio Claudian dynasty, where family dinners meant poison and the wine and love was just betrayal with better lighting. Born on November 6th, 15th CE, in a gritty Roman outpost on the Rhine, think Cologne before it had a name, Agrippina wasn't cradled in silk. Her father, Germanicus, was Rome's golden general, adored until he wasn't. By 19 CE, he was dead, maybe poisoned, leaving whispers of Emperor Tiberius's involvement. Her mother, Agrippina the Elder, raged against the throne and paid with starvation. Little Agrippina, barely 4, didn't play with dolls. She dodged daggers, learning to read eyes before scrolls. By her teens, she'd seen brothers exiled, her family's name smeared like mud on a toga. Here's the shock. At 13, married off to Gnaeus Domitius, a brute with a consul's title, she was thrust into a world where betrayal wasn't a risk, it was breakfast. Imagine being a kid in a corporate shark tank, except the sharks wear togas, and the stakes are your head on a pike. Yet Agrippina didn't break, she sharpened. Every snub, every knife glint in the palace, honed her. By 37 CE, she had birthed Nero, her living chess piece, in a villa near Antium. She wasn't just a mother, she was a strategist, betting her bloodline on a boy who'd one day wear the purple. In a world where women were props, she turned her chains into a ladder, climbing Rome's chaos with a fox's cunning. Picture your scheming co-worker, the one who suggests your every move, then steals the promotion. That's Agrippina, but with poison and praetorians. Her ambition wasn't loud. It was a quiet fire, burning through Rome's shadows. Because here's the truth, power in Rome wasn't crowns or armies. It was knowing whose wine to spike. Agrippina played that game before she could vote, if voting were a thing. Meanwhile, the Julio Claudian court churned. Her brother Caligula went mad. Her uncle Claudius stumbled to the throne. She didn't need a sword. She had silence, a weapon deadlier than steel. If you're up at 2 a.m., scrolling in a sweaty Hanoi flat or a chilly Glasgow attic, you get it. Survival's a hustle, a dance through traps nobody sees. Agrippina danced it better than most. So as you lie there, stressed from a day of emails or deadlines, think of her, a girl who turned a blood-soaked childhood into an empire's strings. We don't face daggers, but we dodge our own betrayals, office politics, broken promises. Agrippina's story, all scheming and grit, reminds us surviving's a triumph, then and now. History's not just names, it's proof we're tougher than we know. Imagine Rome's Palatine Hill, 49 CE, where torchlight dances on marble and secrets slither through the air like snakes. You're expecting Agrippina the Younger to storm in with legions, a crown gleaming. Wrong. She didn't build walls. She spun webs, sticky and silent, trapping Rome's elite like flies. No armies, just marriages, no swords, just whispers. Agrippina wove power from shadows, her cunning tighter than any fortress. In the Julio Claudian snake pit, where loyalty was a coin spent once, she played chess while others played dice, building an empire without lifting a brick. Her first move, marriage to Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus in 28 CE, a brutish cousin with a consul's swagger. He was no prince, just a rung on her ladder. By 37 CE, she had birthed Nero, her living wildcard. When Gnaeus died, she pivoted, so snaring Emperor Claudius, her uncle, in 49 CE. That marriage wasn't love, it was leverage. Claudius, wobbly and old, was clay in her hands. She nudged him to adopt Nero in 50 CE, shoving his son Britannicus aside. Here's the shock. Rivals didn't just lose, they vanished. Lollia Paulina, a contender for Claudius's bed, faced Agrippina's wrath. Accused of black magic, Paulina lost her wealth, then her life, forced to suicide by Agrippina's command. It was less a power play, more a guillotine in a toga. Yet Agrippina's real genius was her allies. She didn't need troops when she had Pallas, Claudius's freedman advisor, whispering her script. She didn't need a throne when Burrus, her pick for Praetorian Guard chief, guarded her son's path. Seneca, Nero's tutor, was her pen, scripting a future emperor. She wove these men into a net, each thread a favor, a secret, a threat. In a world where men wore laurels and women wore silence, Agrippina turned her voice into a whisper that roared. Picture a modern boardroom schemer, planting ideas while sipping coffee, then stealing the corner office. That's Agrippina, but with poison and praetorians. Because power wasn't shouting in the Senate, it was knowing whose ear to bend. She didn't storm gates, she married them, birthed them, owned them. Nero, her sculpted emperor, was her masterpiece, betrothed to Claudius's daughter Octavia in 53 CE to lock in his claim. Meanwhile, she sidelined Britannicus, isolating him like a forgotten intern. Her webs held Rome tighter than stone, each strand a calculated risk. If you've ever navigated office politics, dodging egos to climb, you know her game. Power's not a crown, it's a quiet knife. So at 3 a.m., tossing in a Hanoi apartment or a Glasgow loft, feel Agrippina's hustle. She didn't build fortresses, she built futures, spinning survival from betrayal. We don't face emperors, but we dodge our own traps, deadlines, betrayals, dreams deferred. Agrippina's story, all grit and guile, whispers a truth. Strength isn't loud, it's lethal silence. History's not just dates, it's proof we're built to outlast the snakes. What webs are you weaving to survive your own empire? You're in Rome, 54 CE, where the Palatine's marble hums with secrets, and the air tastes of ambition gone sour. Agrippina the Younger stands tall, not on a throne but behind it, her hands weaving Nero's destiny like a spider spins silk. She's no queen, she's a shadow, sculpting an emperor from her own blood. Yet here's the twist. The throne she built for Nero becomes her tomb, her ambition, a noose. In the Julio-Claudian circus, where loyalty's a coin spent fast, Agrippina learns the cost of crafting a monster. She'd played the game flawlessly. Married to Emperor Claudius in 49 CE, she nudged him to adopt her son Nero in 50 CE, sidelining his own heir Britannicus. By 54 CE, Claudius was dead. Whispers say Agrippina slipped poison into his mushrooms at a banquet. Nero, just 17, took the purple, and Agrippina, crowned Augusta, shone. Coins bore her face, statues rose in her name. She sat at Senate meetings, veiled but commanding, a partner in empire, as she boasted. Her allies, Pallas, Burrus, Seneca, held Rome's strings, her webs tighter than any fortress. But Nero wasn't her puppet. He was her poison, growing wild. Here's the shock. In 59 CE, Nero turned on her. Enraged by her scolding over his lover, Poppaea Sabina, he rigged a boat at Baiae to collapse, meant to drown his mother in a tragic accident. Agrippina swam ashore defiant, her eyes burning with betrayal. So Nero sent assassins. Cornered in her villa, she faced them, bearing her womb. "Strike here," she spat, cursing the son she'd birthed. Blades fell, and Agrippina crumpled, her blood soaking the floor where she'd once spun power. It wasn't just murder. It was a son erasing his maker, a throne devouring its architect. Rome didn't blink. Her name faded, her memoirs lost, though Tacitus clung to their scraps. Yet every mad decree Nero issued, every statue he raised, carried her shadow, faint as a ghost's whisper. She didn't build temples. She built an emperor, and he buried her for it. Think of a startup founder pouring their soul into a company, only to be ousted by their own creation. That's Agrippina, but with daggers and dynasties. Her ambition wasn't a crown. It was a gamble, and she lost everything to win. Because power's a cruel casino, Agrippina bet her life, stacking the deck with marriages, poison, and plots. She outfoxed senators, outlived rivals, but couldn't outrun her son. Meanwhile, we moderns play our own games, office politics, family feuds, dodging betrayals that don't draw blood, but still sting. At 4 a.m., tossing in a Bangkok studio or a Dublin attic, feel her fall. Agrippina's story, all grit and guile, isn't just history, it's a mirror. We don't face assassins, but we face our own monsters, creations we can't control. Her end whispers, "Build carefully, because what you make might break you." History's not dates, it's proof we survive, even when the cost cuts deep. You're in Rome, 50 CE, where the Senate's murmurs echo off marble, and every word's a potential death sentence. Agrippina the Younger doesn't shout her plans. She barely speaks. Her silence isn't weakness. It's a fortress, built brick by invisible brick, stronger than any Roman wall. In the Julio-Claudian snake pit, where loud mouths get slit, she wields quiet like a blade, carving power from pauses. Her eyes, sharp as obsidian, scan banquets for poison or betrayal, her lips sealed but her mind screaming strategy. Silence wasn't her cage, it was her crown. She didn't storm the forum or rally legions. Instead, she listened, waited, struck. Married to Emperor Claudius in 49 CE, she nudged him to adopt her son Nero, sidelining Britannicus with a smile. Her allies, Pallas whispering in Claudius's ear, Burrus commanding the Praetorian Guard, were her threads, woven tight. Here's the shock. When Claudius wavered, leaning toward his son Britannicus, Agrippina served him mushrooms in 54 CE, laced with poison. He choked, died, and Nero, just 17, took the throne. No speech, no scene, just a quiet plate and a dead emperor her silence louder than any war cry. Because Agrippina knew, in Rome, noise invited knives. She sat at Senate meetings, veiled behind a curtain, her presence a whisper that roared. In 50 CE, she was named Augusta, her face stamped on coins, a first for a living Roman woman. She didn't boast. She let statues in cities like Colonia Claudia, her birthplace, shout for her. Even founded a colony there, now Cologne, naming it after herself with a nod, not a proclamation. Her restraint was a chess move, each pause a checkmate. Picture a modern workplace schemer, saying nothing in a meeting but owning the room. That's Agrippina, but with togas and treason. Yet silence was her shield. When rivals like Messalina plotted, Agrippina dodged, her quiet deflecting daggers. She outmaneuvered Lolia Paulina, forcing her suicide with a whispered accusation of sorcery. Her power wasn't banners or battles. It was knowing when to hush, when to let a rumor slip like wine from a cracked cup. Meanwhile, Rome's elite danced in her web, unaware they were caught. Ever held your tongue in a toxic office, waiting for the right moment? That's Agrippina, her silence a structure that held an empire. So at 4 a.m., tossing in a Taipei flat or a Glasgow loft, hear her quiet. Agrippina's story isn't just Roman intrigue, it's survival, built on knowing when to speak and when to bite your lip. We don't dodge literal poison, but we navigate our own traps, backstabbing colleagues, silent grudges. Her life, all cunning and restraint, whispers a truth. The strongest power doesn't shout, it simmers. History's not just scrolls, it's proof we endure, even when words fail. What's your silence building in your own empire? You're in Rome, 59 CE, where the Palatine's torches flicker and Agrippina's name is already fading, like ink smudged by a careless hand. No statues bear her face, no coins keep her name. Yet Agrippina the Younger's shadow looms, not in marble but in the DNA of power itself. She didn't build temples, she built a blueprint, a ghost that haunts every woman who ruled from the dark. Her legacy isn't stone, it's a web, invisible yet ironclad, binding Rome's story long after her blood soaked the villa floor. Her life was a masterclass in silent domination. Crowned Augusta in 50 CE, she shaped Nero's reign, her whispers in his ear louder than any Senate decree. Her memoirs, now lost, fed Tacitus's annals, etching her truth into history's margins. Here's the shock. Years before her death, astrologers warned she'd make Nero emperor, and he'd kill her. Let him kill me, she scoffed, as long as he rules. She knew the cost, yet spun her webs anyway, a mother betting her life on a monster. Her fingerprints mark Nero's every mad act, his statues, his laws, his fires, prove her power outlived her pulse. Because Agrippina wasn't just Nero's mother, she was the mold for shadow queens. Livia before her, Catherine de' Medici after, they all echoed her. Women who ruled without crowns, pulling strings while men took bows. In 1361, Boccaccio's De Mulieribus Claris immortalized her, one of the first Western works to honor women's lives. Even Cologne, her birthplace, bears her mark. Colonia Claudia, founded at her nudge, still carries her name in its stones. She didn't need arches. Her influence was architecture, unseen but unshakable. Think of a modern influencer, shaping trends with a single post, then vanishing from the spotlight. That's Agrippina, but with poison and praetorians. Yet her erasure stings. Rome buried her name, her memoirs in dust, her grave a humble mound in Misenum. Nero's reign, built on her blood, mocked her with every gilded statue. Meanwhile, her story whispers, power doesn't need a stage, just a steady hand. She wove Rome's elite into her maze, their egos dancing to her silent tune. Ever watched a colleague steer a project without taking credit, only to see it shine? That's Agrippina's art, her walls invisible but eternal. So at 5 a.m., restless in a Hanoi studio or a Glasgow attic, feel her ghost. Agrippina's life, all cunning and sacrifice, isn't just a Roman legacy, it's a mirror. We don't spin imperial webs, but we craft our own careers, families, dreams, knowing some victories go unnamed. Her story, sharp as a dagger, cuts through time. Resilience isn't loud, it's lasting. History's not just scrolls, it's proof we endure, even when forgotten. Agrippina's walls, unseen, still stand. What legacy are you weaving in your own sleepless empire? You're in Saqqara, 27th century BCE, where the desert bites your sandals and the Nile hums with secrets older than gods. No warriors clash here, no swords gleam. Instead, meet Imhotep, a man with no spear, just a mind sharp enough to cut through time. Architect, physician, priest, vizier, he's a human Swiss army knife, serving Pharaoh Djoser in a world where power usually meant blood. Yet Imhotep built power with stone, stacking Egypt's first monumental pyramid, a staircase to eternity that didn't just bury a king, it crowned an empire. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where brains beat blades, and a single man's vision outlasted dynasties. Imhotep wasn't born to rule, no royal blood, no gilded chariot. He was a thinker, a doer, rising from obscurity to vizier, Djoser's right hand. His masterpiece? The Step Pyramid, a 62-meter marvel at Saqqara, is the world's first stone monument. Before him, kings got mud brick mounds forgettable as dust. Imhotep dreamed bigger, stacking 6 limestone tiers like a ladder to the stars. It wasn't just a tomb, it was a manifesto, screaming Djoser's divine in Egypt's forever. No war, no slaughter, just geometry, and the Nile's tribes knelt. Here's the shock. This mortal, this nobody, became a god. By the new kingdom, Egyptians worshipped Imhotep, temples rising in his name, scribes praying to his wisdom, not for fighting, but for building. Because Imhotep didn't need weapons. His tools? A reed pen, a measuring cord, a brain that saw eternity in stone. He designed Saqqara's complex, courtyards, temples, and colonnades as a stage for Djoser's immortality, binding Egypt's people to their pharaoh. His medical texts healed, his priesthood wove faith into power. In a world where kings hacked their way to glory, Imhotep stacked stones and won. Think of a modern tech mogul, not swinging fists, but coding an app that changes the world. That's Imhotep, but with limestone and a desert backdrop. Yet his genius was quiet. No grand speeches, no victory parades. He calculated, sketched, and built. His pyramid didn't just stand, it spoke, uniting a fractured land under Djoser's shadow. Meanwhile, warriors faded, their names dust. Imhotep endured, carved into hymns, deified by Greeks as Asclepius. Ever met someone who built something bigger than themselves? A startup, a book, a dream? That's Imhotep, his legacy a stone whisper that outlasted empires. So at 5 a.m., restless in a Cairo flat or a Sydney loft, feel his shadow. Imhotep's story isn't just ancient Egypt, it's survival, proof that brains outshine swords. We don't stack pyramids, but we build our own monuments. Careers, ideas, lives against time's grind. His life, all grit and genius, murmurs a truth. Greatness doesn't shout, it stands. History's not just stones, it's proof we endure, even when the desert bites. What's your immortal stone? Your shot at eternity? You're in Saqqara, 27th century BCE, where the desert's heat claws your skin and the Nile whispers secrets older than gods. No tombs dot the horizon, just flat, forgettable mounds for dead kings. Then Imhotep, Djoser's genius vizier, stacks a monster. The Step Pyramid, a 62-meter limestone beast climbing to the heavens. This isn't a grave, it's a throne, eternal and unyielding, screaming, Djoser's a god, and you're not. In ancient Egypt, where power flowed from swords, Imhotep built a stone sermon that glued a nation to its pharaoh. Welcome to a world where architecture didn't just stand, it ruled. The Step Pyramid wasn't about death, it was about divinity. Its 6-stepped tiers, gleaming white under the sun, towered over mud brick mastabas like a skyscraper over shacks. Here's the shock. Imhotep didn't just build big, he built first, daring to stack cut limestone in a world of mud and reeds. No one had done it. His pyramid, layered like a cosmic cake, wasn't just stable, it was a statement, each tier a step closer to the gods. The surrounding complex of courtyards, temples, colonnades mimicked a royal palace, staging Djoser's reign for eternity. It was propaganda in stone, a middle finger to mortality that made Egypt's tribes bow as one. Because Imhotep didn't just stack blocks, he engineered awe. His design used precise masonry, balancing weight to defy collapse, a math nerd's flex in a spear-slinging age. The Hebsed court, carved for Djoser's festival of vigor, froze his strength forever, no blood needed. Temples channeled offerings, binding priests and peasants to the crown. It was crowd control without a whip. Fear turned to faith. Think of a modern dictator's statue, not art but authority, demanding loyalty with every glance. Imhotep's pyramid didn't ask. It commanded, uniting a fractured land under Djoser's shadow. Yet this wasn't just engineering, it was theology. The pyramid's steps, climbing skyward, glorified Djoser, tying Egypt's religion to its ruler. Imhotep, priest and architect, wove faith into stone, making Saqqara a pilgrimage site where awe cemented power. Meanwhile, other kings' tombs crumbled, Imhotep's stood, a testament to brains over brawn. Ever walked past a city's gleaming monument, the Capitol dome, a corporate tower, and felt small? That's Imhotep's trick, his stone throne still preaching at 6 a.m., whether you're in Cairo or Calgary. So, sleepless in a Delhi flat or a Denver loft, hear Imhotep's echo. His step pyramid isn't just ancient Egyptian architecture, it's survival, proof that vision outlasts violence. We don't build pyramids, but we chase our own monuments, careers, legacies, dreams against time's grind. Imhotep's story, all grit and genius, whispers a truth. Greatness doesn't bleed, it builds. History's not just stones, it's proof we endure, even when the desert bites. What's your throne? Your shot at immortality. You're in Memphis, Egypt, centuries after the 27th century BCE, where the desert's breath is hot and temples hum with chants. No pharaoh's name echoes here, only Imhotep's, once a mere man, now a god. He didn't wield swords or wear crowns, yet his shadow towers over warriors' graves. Architect of the step pyramid, physician, priest, vizier, Imhotep didn't just build for Pharaoh Djoser, he built eternity, his name rising from Saqqara's sands to altars across Egypt. In a world obsessed with death, he became a beacon of life, a paradox carved in limestone. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where brains outlasted blades, and a commoner became divine. Imhotep was no royal. Born without a drop of divine blood, he climbed to vizier through sheer intellect, crafting the step pyramid at Saqqara, a 62-meter marvel. Here's the shock. This nobody, this reed pen nerd became a god. By the New Kingdom, Around 1500 BCE, Egyptians built temples to him, scribes prayed to his wisdom, and healers invoked his name. No battles won, no enemies slain, just a pyramid and a mind that reshaped a nation. His medical texts, scrawled on papyrus, saved lives. His priesthood wove faith into power. In a culture burying kings in gold, Imhotep's legacy was life, wisdom, healing, and building. Because he didn't just stack stones, he stacked ideas. The step pyramid wasn't a tomb, it was a system, tying Egypt's religion, politics, and people to Djoser's divine rule. Imhotep's genius made Saqqara a pilgrimage site, where awe cemented loyalty. By the Ptolemaic era, Greeks linked him to Asclepius, their god of medicine, his name crossing cultures like a desert wind. Warriors faded, Imhotep endured, his temples humming while pharaohs' tombs crumbled. Think of a modern icon, a tech guru or artist, deified not for fighting, but for creating. That's Imhotep, but with papyrus and a desert backdrop. Yet his divinity was no fluke. He engineered immortality, not with blood, but with blueprints. His pyramid unified Egypt's tribes. His medical knowledge outlived dynasties. Meanwhile, the king's names dissolved, their glory dust. Tusa Imhotep lived, etched in hymns, worshipped by those who valued brains over brawn. Ever known someone whose work outshone their ego? A coder, a teacher, a builder? That's Imhotep, his legacy a quiet fire that burned through time. So at 6 a.m., restless in a Cairo studio or a Toronto loft, feel his echo. Imhotep's story isn't just an ancient Egyptian legend, it's a survival proof that ideas outshine swords. We don't pray to gods of wisdom, but we chase our own immortality projects, art, lives against time's grind. His life, all grit and genius, whispers a truth. Greatness doesn't conquer, it creates. History's not just temples, it's proof we endure, even when sands bury our names. What's your legacy? Your shot at divinity. You're in Saqqara, 27th century BCE, where the desert's heat sears your sandals and the step pyramid looms like a god's clenched fist. Imhotep, Djoser's mastermind, didn't swing swords. He stacked stones, turning fear into faith with a 62-meter limestone beast. This wasn't just a tomb, it was a loyalty machine, binding Egypt's tribes to their pharaoh without spilling a drop of blood. In a land where chaos lurked like a jackal, Imhotep's architecture tamed hearts, not just horizons. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where stones preached louder than priests, and power was built, not bled. The step pyramid's 6 tiers weren't just a grave, they were a stage. Its Hebsed court, carved to mimic Djoser's festival of strength, froze his vigor in stone, a propaganda stunt for eternity. Here's the shock. Imhotep unified a fractured Egypt, not with armies, but with awe. Before him, tribes squabbled, loyalty as thin as papyrus. His pyramid, gleaming under the sun, drew pilgrims to Saqqara, their gasps cementing Djoser's divine rule. Temples and colonnades around it funneled offerings, tying priests and peasants to the crown. It was crowd control without a whip. Fear morphed into worship, because Imhotep didn't just build, he engineered belief. His precise masonry, balancing limestone like a cosmic equation, made the pyramid unshakable, a metaphor for Djoser's reign. The surrounding complex, courtyards, shrines, fake doors, mimicked a royal palace, staging divinity for every visitor. Unlike Agrippina's sneaky webs, Imhotep's power was bold, visible, and eternal. Later architects, from Chola kings raising temple towers to Roman emperors stacking arches, copied his playbook: build big, scare small. Think of a modern billboard or a towering Capitol dome, Propaganda doesn't need blood when it has scale. Imhotep's stones shouted, "Bow or be forgotten." Yet his genius was subtle. He didn't force loyalty, he seduced it. Pilgrims didn't see a tomb, they saw a god king's throne, its steps climbing to the heavens. Priests didn't just pray, they profited, their offerings fueling Djoser's cult. Meanwhile, fear of rebellion dissolved in the pyramid's shadow. Ever stood in a stadium, dwarfed by its roar, feeling part of something bigger? That's Imhotep's trick, his architecture binding souls like a modern ad campaign binds consumers. So at 7 a.m., restless in a Cairo studio or a Vancouver loft, hear Imhotep's echo. His step pyramid isn't just ancient Egyptian architecture, it's survival, proof that vision tames chaos. We don't build pyramids, but we chase loyalty through brands, projects, and dreams, against our own fears. Imhotep's story, all grit and genius, murmurs a truth. Power doesn't always cut, sometimes it builds. History's not just stones, it's proof we endure, even when sands shift. What's your monument, your way to tame fear? You're in Saqqara in 2025 CE, standing where the desert's teeth still gnaw at your shoes, and the step pyramid looms, a 4,700-year-old giant carved by Imhotep's hand. Djoser's dynasty is dust, his name a whisper, but this limestone beast stands tall, mocking time itself. Imhotep, no warrior, no king, cut a scar into the desert that outlived empires, his genius a blade sharper than any pharaoh's sword. Unlike Agrippina's fragile webs, dissolved by betrayal, Imhotep's stones endure, a mark on human memory that laughs at mortality. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where one man's math beat blood and a pyramid became forever. Here's the shock. The step pyramid, built in the 27th century BCE, stands after 4,700 years, while Djoser's line crumbled in a blink. Imhotep's 62-meter marvel, 6 tiers stacked like a cosmic staircase, wasn't just a tomb, it was a manifesto, cementing Egypt's unity under a god-king's gaze. Its limestone sheen, precise as a scribe's script, defied collapse, a testament to Imhotep's brain. The surrounding complex, courtyards, temples, and colonnades, staged Djoser's divinity, drawing pilgrims whose awe outlasted dynasties. Other kings' mud brick mounds vanished. Imhotep's stone throne endures, a middle finger to oblivion. Because Imhotep didn't just build, he branded. His pyramid was an architecture, it was ideology, tying Egypt's tribes to a single crown. Later pharaohs, like Khufu with his Giza giant, chased his vision, but Imhotep set the mold. By the Ptolemaic era, Greeks worshipped him as Asclepius, his name crossing seas. His medical texts, his priesthood, his blueprints, they didn't just serve Djoser, they shaped a civilization. Think of a modern tech titan, their app outliving their name, reshaping how we live. That's Imhotep, but with limestone and a desert's glare. Yet his legacy's no accident. The step pyramid's precision, blocks cut, balanced, eternal, was a calculated act, not a war cry. It stood as Egypt's spine, its shadow silencing rebels. While Agrippina's plots faded with her blood, Imhotep's stones spoke, their silence louder than any emperor's roar. Meanwhile, his name echoed in hymns, deified by scribes who saw wisdom as power. Ever built something, a project, a post, a dream that outlasted your moment? That's Imhotep, his cut in the desert a scar on time. So at 7 a.m., sleepless in a Cairo flat or a Miami loft, feel his weight. Imhotep's step pyramid isn't just an ancient Egyptian legacy, it's a survival, proof that brains trump blades. We don't carve pyramids, but we chase our own marks, posts, careers, ideas, against time's grind. His story, all grit and geometry, whispers a truth. Greatness doesn't bleed, it builds. History's not just stones, it's proof we endure, even when sands bury our names. What's your cut, your shot at eternity? You're in Rome, 100 CE, dust clogging your sandals, staring up at the Arch of Titus, its marble sneering like a smug overlord. This isn't just a gate, it's a trap, a stone sermon carved to chain your mind. Roman architecture didn't build homes, it built obedience, each arch and column a whisper of imperial might. From Agrippina's shadowy webs to Imhotep's eternal pyramids, power needed a stage, and Rome's architects delivered, turning cities into mind games that screamed bow or be buried. Welcome to an empire where stones spoke louder than swords. The Arch of Titus, raised in 81 CE to gloat over Jerusalem's fall, wasn't art, it was propaganda. Its reliefs, showing looted menorahs and chained captives, didn't just celebrate victory, they crushed the rebellion's spirit. Here's the shock: Rome ruled without bloodshed by building fear into beauty. No need for armies when an arch could make you feel small. Corinthian columns, with their leafy swirls, dressed basilicas from Spain to Syria, not for aesthetics, but to bully. A colonnaded courthouse wasn't just grand, it was a silent order. Kneel or else. Aqueducts like the Aqua Appia, flowing since 312 BCE, didn't just bring water, they piped loyalty, tying every sip to Rome's will. Because architecture was Rome's con. Emperors like Augustus didn't build for fun, they built to brainwash. A forum's marble gleam didn't need a submit sign, its scale did the talking. Meanwhile, far from Rome, South India's Chola kings played the same trick. Their Brihadisvara temple, towering since 1010 CE, wasn't just for Shiva, it was a granite flex, proving Rajaraja Chola's divine right to rule. No swords drawn, just stones stacked, and villages knelt. It's like Imhotep's pyramid, but with more gods and less desert. Think of a modern skyscraper looming over your city, whispering, "You're nothing without us." That's Rome's arches, still winning. Yet the genius was subtle. These structures didn't force allegiance, they seduced it. A triumphal arch didn't attack, it awed, making rebellion feel pointless. Aqueducts didn't just hydrate, they bound you to the empire's pulse. Like Agrippina's silent schemes, architecture worked in the background, shaping minds without a word. Ever walked past a city hall's glass facade and felt dwarfed? That's the Roman trick, reborn in concrete and steel, making you obey without a fight. So at 8 a.m., sleepless in a Cairo flat or a Chicago loft, hear the stones echo. Roman architecture isn't just ancient history, it's survival, proof that power builds minds, not just walls. We don't carve arches, but we navigate our own empires, corporate towers, urban sprawls, where design still manipulates. This story, all cunning and marble, whispers a truth. Control doesn't always bleed, sometimes it stands. History's not just ruins, it's proof we endure, even under empire's gaze. What's your city's mind game, bending you to its will? You're in Rome, 80 CE, where the Colosseum's roar drowns out your thoughts and the air reeks of blood and sweat. This isn't a stadium, it's a cage, a stone beast gripping 50,000 souls in a frenzy of cheers. Roman emperors didn't just build arenas, they built belief, turning rebellion into roars. Like Imhotep's pyramid or Agrippina's webs, these structures weren't homes, they were traps, chaining hearts to power. From ancient Rome to medieval Europe, architecture didn't just stand, it preached, each making you kneel without a whip. Welcome to a world where stones fought battles of the soul. The Colosseum, completed in 80 CE, was Rome's ultimate con. Its concrete vaults and trapdoors were clever, but its genius was control. Gladiators bled, lions roared, and crowds cheered, each scream a vote for the emperor. Here's the shock. This blood-soaked spectacle wasn't entertainment. It was brainwashing, turning rebels into fans without a single sword raised. Bread and circuses kept Rome fed. The Colosseum kept it tame, a 50,000-seat leash on the mob's spirit. Greek stadia, like Olympia's, set the stage with races, but Rome perfected it, making revolt feel like skipping a holiday. Fast forward to 1163 CE, and Gothic cathedrals like Notre Dame pierce Europe's skies. Their spires, sharp as divine judgment, didn't just praise God, they dwarfed you, whispering, "The church outranks your king and your dust." Stained glass glowed, stone ribs soared, each vault a sermon louder than any pope. These weren't just churches, they were battlegrounds, bending souls to heavens and the church's will. In South India, Chola temples like Airavatsvara, carved in the 12th century, played the same game, drawing Tamil pilgrims to kneel before Shiva and the king who built his shrine. No blood, just awe and loyalty followed, because architecture didn't fight, it seduced. The Colosseum's cheers drowned out dissent. Notre Dame's spires made rebellion feel sinful. Like Imhotep's step pyramid, these structures were unified through fear and faith. No armies were needed. Meanwhile, emperors and bishops grinned, knowing a well-placed stone could rule better than a legion. Think of a modern stadium, its roar swallowing your thoughts, or a megachurch's stage, binding you to its glow. Ever felt small in a crowd, swept up in its chant? That's the Colosseum's ghost, still preaching control. So at 9 a.m., sleepless in a Lagos flat or a Lisbon loft, hear the stones echo. The Colosseum and cathedrals aren't just ancient architecture, they're survival, proof that power shapes belief with spectacle. We don't face gladiators, but we navigate our own arenas, social media, city squares, where design still sways us. This story, all blood and spires, whispers a truth. Control doesn't always cut, it captivates. History's not just ruins, it's proof we endure, even under power's gaze. What's your battlefield bending your beliefs? You're in Rome, 271 CE, dust stinging your eyes as the Aurelian walls rise, a 19-kilometer serpent of brick coiling around the city. These aren't just walls, they're judges, sorting the safe from the doomed, the loyal from the lost. Gates like Porta Nigra stand as grim bouncers, deciding who feasts and who starves. From Rome's stone barriers to China's Great Wall, architecture didn't just protect, it divided, carving hierarchies sharper than any sword. Like Imhotep's unifying pyramid, or Agrippina's scheming webs, walls and gates told you where you stood or where you'd never stand. Welcome to a world where stones didn't just stand, they sentenced. The Aurelian walls, built to fend off barbarians, weren't just a defense, they were propaganda. Their looming bulk screamed, "You're safe," but only because Rome says so. Here's the shock. These walls didn't just block enemies, they starved rebels, locking out anyone who dared defy the emperor. Gates sorted the worthy from the wretched, letting elites pass while peasants groveled. Palaces got marble, slums got mud. Across the world, China's Great Wall, stretching from 221 BCE, wasn't just a shield, it was a decree, bellowing, "This is ours, and you're either with us or nothing." Its watchtowers didn't just spot invaders, they eyed citizens, reminding them who ruled. because walls weren't just stone, they were stories. In South India, Chola temples Gopurams, towering since the 10th century, welcomed devotees but sneered at rivals. Only the right crossed their thresholds. Others knelt outside, humbled by granite. Unlike Imhotep's pyramid, which unified through awe, these gates were divided, etching power into every brick. Meanwhile, emperors and kings smirked, knowing a well-placed wall could control better than a legion. Think of modern gated communities, their steel fences purring privilege, or border walls snarling exclusion. Ever swiped a keycard to enter a sleek office while others wait outside? That's Porta Nigra's echo, still judging. Yet the genius was cruel. Walls didn't just protect, they preached, sorting society into insiders and outcasts. The Great Wall bound China's people to the emperor's will, its length a silent threat. Chola Gopurams made faith a loyalty test, their height dwarfing dissent. Like Agrippina's silent schemes, those structures worked in the background, shaping who belonged. Ever felt locked out of a job, a clique, a dream by an invisible barrier? That's the ancient wall, reborn in steel and glass, deciding your place. So at 10 a.m., sleepless in a Delhi flat or a Dublin loft, feel the stone's verdict. Ancient walls aren't just history, they're survival, proof that power divides with design. We don't build great walls, but we face our own gates, paywalls, borders, social circles, sorting us into haves and have-nots. This story, all brick and bias, whispers a truth. Control doesn't always fight, it filters. History's not just ruins, it's proof we endure, even when locked out. What's your gate deciding where you stand? You're in Constantinople 537 CE, where the Hagia Sophia's dome rises like a fist over Rome's ashes. This isn't just a church, it's a wrecking ball, smashing pagan temples to dust and burying the old gods under Christian concrete. New rulers don't just take power, they erase it, bulldozing yesterday's monuments to build tomorrow's myths. From Egypt's defaced statues to Byzantium's soaring domes, architecture wasn't renewal, it was erasure, a chisel rewriting history. Like Imhotep's eternal pyramid or Agrippina's fragile webs, these stones didn't just stand, they erased. Welcome to a world where power smashes and builds to own the past. When Rome fell, Emperor Justinian raised the Hagia Sophia, its 55-meter dome, wider than anything before, a slap to pagan ghosts. Here's the shock. Destroying old temples wasn't enough. Rulers defaced them, chiseling out names to kill their memory. In Egypt, pharaohs like Thutmose III scratched rivals' cartouches from monuments, erasing their souls from eternity. It wasn't vandalism, it was murder by masonry, ensuring the past stayed dead. South India's Chola kings, like Rajendra I in the 11th century, built new temples to outshine predecessors, their gopurams towering over old shrines like a middle finger to history's losers. Because power loves a clean slate. When regimes change, oh, so do skylines. The Hagia Sophia didn't just worship God, it buried Rome's old gods, its Christian mosaics plastering over pagan echoes. In Egypt, new pharaohs didn't just rule, they rewrote, their statues replacing rivals like a corporate rebrand. Chola temples, gleaming with fresh carvings, didn't just honor Shiva, they screamed, "My reign's divine, not theirs." Unlike Imhotep's unifying stones, these acts divided time, the past from the present. Think of modern urban renewal, a dictator's palace flipped to a mall, a colonial statue toppled to dust. Ever walked past a shiny new government tower and felt history vanish? That's the ancient smash and build, reborn. Yet the cruelty was clever. Destroying wasn't chaos, it was control. A defaced monument didn't just erase a name, it erased rebellion's hope. New structures, like the Hagia Sophia's dome, didn't just inspire, they intimidated, their scale shouting, "We're eternal, you're not." Meanwhile, rulers grinned, knowing stones could rewrite history better than scrolls. Like Agrippina's webs, this was power in the shadows, reshaping memory without a fight. Ever seen a city bulldoze a slum for a gleaming plaza? That's the old trick, wiping out the past to sell a new story. So at 11 a.m., sleepless in a Mumbai flat or a Montreal loft, feel the stone's weight. The Hagia Sophia and defaced monuments aren't just ancient history, they're survival, proof that power rewrites with a hammer. We don't smash temples, but we face our own erasures, old neighborhoods razed, legacies buried. This story, all rubble and ambition, whispers a truth. Control doesn't just rule, it remakes. History's not just ruins, it's proof we endure, even when power rebuilds. What's your city smashing to rewrite its story? You're in Rome, 126 CE, standing beneath the Pantheon's dome, its oculus piercing the sky like a god's unblinking eye. This isn't just a temple, it's a ghost, a stone soul that outlives empires. From Agrippina's fleeting webs to Imhotep's eternal pyramid, power craves a body to cheat death, and architecture delivers, casting shadows that haunt long after swords rust. The Pantheon, Chola temples, these aren't just buildings, they're ideologies, untouchable spirits preaching control across centuries. Welcome to a world where stones don't just stand, they whisper, binding souls to the mighty. The Pantheon, built under Hadrian, wasn't just for gods, it was a boast. Its 43-meter dome screaming, "Rome's eternal, and you're not." Here's the shock. Rome fell, its emperor's dust, yet the Pantheon stands, 1,900 years on, mocking their dreams of forever. Its concrete curves, unbroken by time, didn't just shelter worshippers, they sold an idea, Rome's gods, and its power outlast all. In South India, Chola temples like Brihadisvara, rising in 1010 CE, did the same, their Gopurams binding Tamil souls to Shiva and the king. These weren't shrines, they were contracts, etched in granite, demanding loyalty beyond death. Because stone carries souls you can't touch, Agrippina wove power from silence, gone in a generation. Imhotep's pyramid unified Egypt, standing 4,700 years. But architecture like the Pantheon or Chola temples, their ideologies in physical form, outliving their makers. The Pantheon's dome, a perfect sphere, didn't just awe, it convinced, tying Rome's people to an empire's myth. Chola Gopurams, carved with gods, made kings divine, their height silencing dissent. Think of modern skyscrapers, their glass towers selling progress or power, dwarfing you into submission. Ever stood in a city square, feeling small under a corporate spire? That's the Pantheon's shadow, still preaching. Yet the trick is cruel. These structures don't just endure, they manipulate, their stones whispering the mighty's dreams long after their bones crumble. The Pantheon's oculus, staring down, didn't just light a temple, it watched, binding worshippers to Rome's will. Chola temples, with their intricate carvings, didn't just pray, they ruled, tying faith to the crown. Like Imhotep's Saqqara, they built belief. Unlike Agrippina's webs, they lasted. Meanwhile, empires fell, but their stones stood carrying ideas no sword could kill. Ever scrolled past a monument's photo and felt history's weight? That's architecture's soul, untouchable but heavy. So at midnight, sleepless in a Mumbai flat or a Montreal loft, Feel the stone's echo. The Pantheon and Chola temples aren't just ancient architecture, they're survival, proof that ideas outlast flesh. We don't build domes for gods, but we chase our own shadows, skyscrapers, brands, legacies, against time's grind. This story, all marble in memory, whispers a truth. Power doesn't just rule, it endures, carved in stone. History's not just ruins, it's proof we persist, even when empires fade. What's your shadow, your untouchable soul? You're awake at midnight, the world quiet, but your mind loud. Just like Rome's schemers and Egypt's builders, Agrippina wove webs of silence, her cunning toppling emperors yet vanishing like dust. Imhotep stacked stones, his step pyramid a scar on time, outlasting Pharaoh's dreams. Ancient architecture, Colosseum roars, Pantheon domes, didn't just stand, it preached, chaining souls to power's myth. These aren't just stories, they're mirrors, reflecting survival's grit. Agrippina's plots, Imhotep's stones, Rome's arches, they whisper power builds, betrays, endures. Today we chase our own shadows, posts, projects, dreams, against time's grind. Because history's not ruins. It's proof we persist, even when empires crumble. So, as dawn creeps into your Hanoi flat or London loft, feel their echo. What's your legacy? Your untouchable soul. Drop a comment to let us know you're here, or share this tale with friends who get it.